In our last video, we talked about how God is in the details, and he really is, but God's also in the healing. And in our journey, in our process, we realized that there was a lot more healing that needed to take place. And that's where Vicky's story comes in.
Yes. So there's so much in all of our stories, and we bring into our marriages, our pasts, our childhoods. And so what happened at that time was my parents were getting divorced right around that time. And what I discovered was a little bit of backstory of mine is that I grew up in a household where there was partying, there was alcohol, there was drugs. And I've learned a lot about how to handle grief and loss and hard things because it was modeled for you how you grew up. And what was modeled for me in my household was you partied.
Right.
You partied hard and you worked hard. You worked very hard. And so what happened is that we came together with our own ways of handling things. My way was kind of to more connect. His way was more to step back. And I had gone through, at 26, I got sober. In all of my 20s and up until 26, I had a pretty severe, I was a very high functioning alcoholic. Nobody around me believed me when I came out and said that I was, because I was high functioning. I was working, I was building my own business, I was doing hair, and I was really doing well, but nobody had any idea what was actually going on the inside. At about 14, I was taking diet pills and trying to control everything in my life, what I ate, that I didn't eat. I felt better empty. I felt better like that. By the time that I was about 17, I had a very severe eating disorder, and it was hard to keep food in it at all. And I would struggle with that for 10 years. And so I was in very heavy duty therapy, probably from the time I was 18 until into my 30s.
Yeah.
When we were getting married. But I had gotten sober at 26. And at 28, I had really started having a lot of success in my eating disorder. So here we are, fast forward, we're married, and my parents are getting divorced. And I don't live at home, right? I mean, I live in our home. Yeah. I don't live in the house that my parents lived in, but it rocked my world. And it took really this rug out from under me because I had spent a large part of my adult life trying to hold my family together. And I found myself in a place of, I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to deal. I had a lot of therapy under my belt. I had tens of thousands of dollars of therapy and years. And all I knew—
But you hadn't processed it.
I didn't know how to process. Yeah. And I realized that the therapy and all the things they had given me tools, and I knew I'm not going to go back to old self-sabotaging behaviors, like the way that I handled things before, which was to drink over it or to eat and throw up over it or those kinds of things. But I did not have anything in my repertoire to handle the loss that I was feeling at the demise of my parents and my family. And so that's when we discovered grief recovery. Yeah. And a good friend of mine had just gone through it, and she said, I think this would really help you. And my first response was, I don't need grief recovery. I don't need that. But that would be really good for Dan.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to do it.
Yeah.
And then I was getting my credentialing classes done, so I couldn't. So she did.
Yeah. Oh. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, I went to the first the class that they had, and that's when I discovered, oh, what I'm feeling is grief. I never knew that. I never understood that from all the therapy that I have, and understanding that grief is conflicting feelings caused when something ends, when it's the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And that's when I dove headfirst into grief recovery. And that was the incredible, what happened as a result of that was a completely different way to communicate. Yeah. Healing on the foundational level that it did, we were able to communicate so differently.
Our relationship was completely different.
Totally changed. Yeah. No more was there like trigger and response and isolating and all of these things that
we would get mad like any other couple does, but you could always talk through it. And there wasn't a sense in which you were taking things personally. It was just, oh, this happened, I own it, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then
the tools
move on.
Were incredible. And I think that the power that came was It helped me, especially, to have more compassion. I feel like we were communicating differently and better. And as that started to unravel, and the healing that happened there is when we really got vision, I think, of really wanting to help people, because we've been helping people ever since then, but specifically parents.
Yeah.
Specifically parents, because that's when we realized how important it is if we can help people not pass on these tools, these ways of healing and coping that aren't healthy, that we would be able to really even help two
generations at a time,
yes,
really,
generations.
Because if you think about, parenting, and some people will say, you probably heard them say this, maybe you said this, but wow, my parents just did the best they could with what they knew. And our question is, well, what if you could know better? Because if you could know better, you could do better.
Yeah.
And that's really what PK4L is all about.
Yeah. And that led us to even deeper healing as we started to attempt to work together.
Yeah.
And that we would love to share with you in the next story.
That'll be the next story.